Hello, I'm Kochanski, Wilderness Living Skills and Survival Instructor. Today we're here in the back 40 of Four Dog Stove, evaluating, presenting various items of interest to the outdoors person. The focus on this presentation is this cord called Paracord. We affectionately call it 550-200 to remind us that it has a tensile strength of 550 pounds and a safe working load of 200. The cord originates from the use in construction of parachutes. We have a little hank here we're taking apart. We're going to use this to show you how to use this material in tying the most useful, universally useful knot in creation from my estimation. When the parachute cord is used for binding, you can use it total. In this case, when you're doing fine lashing, like building ski shoes and pack frames and so on, you might find that you will get a more powerful lash if you remove the shroud lines, and you might be interested in knowing how that is done. It's a tube. I think in mountaineering they call this kernmantle. This is the kern and this is the mantle, but I might be wrong. So by drawing and pulling it, I will get a cluster of strings. In this case, the string is 7 in number, 7 strings, and each string being rated at 35 pounds, and it can be used for fine lashing, and we use it in other directions. You, of course, have reduced the strength of this to a certain extent, but you've increased its elasticity. The elasticity of paracord is something like 15%, which means that if I had a 100-foot piece of paracord and I pulled on it hard enough, it'll stretch to 115 feet. Now that can be extremely useful, or it can also be extremely dangerous, because the elasticity could cause objects that are attached to the cord flying towards you, and if it hits you in the eye, it could knock your eye out. The knot we're going to tie is this one, and the student who's learning first has to prove to the instructor that they have tied it so firmly, and if you try to move that, the only way you're going to move that is really impinging on the elasticity of the cord. And I have used very little string, so you'll see here, to make this lash in building a stretcher, at each intersection we probably can measure something like a few inches. Where other people use yards, we use inches. And for this amount of string, add a little bit to that, maybe double it by a third, you've made a crushing lash that is very secure and doesn't annoy you by the fact that it wants to work loose. In making that knot, you have to work at it. Generally, you find a lot of people know the names of knots, but they don't know how to apply those knots in a powerful sense. The challenge here is we're going to lash these sticks so that they are lashed very firmly into the form of a cross. In order to do it properly, you realize that as you try to tie these two sticks together, if you hold them this way, you let go of them, they go loose. If you tie them together like this, and you'll find that they are loose. But if you put them into the magic cross, then you will find that tightly done this way, when you force it over, you make it even more tight. So we maintain that sort of crossing initially. To tie the knot, you actually have two knots, one behind the other. And in order to graphically illustrate this, to reduce the confusion, I've tied a knot, then I tie another knot that is left big, and I thread the other end through. So when the person is wanting to learn how this knot is tied with small stuff that you can't really see in the camera, you depend a little bit on my description in that. So I have a second knot that is right behind the first one. And when I take the other end and I pull it through, I'll create a noose. And there it is that I pull it through, and once I've got the noose fairly established, then I pull that knot shut. So that's the easiest way to teach a grade 2 or grade 3 child how to tie this knot. And as I really close this loop, this noose, then I can bind things together. I slip this over, put the two boards at the magic crossing, and then I start trying to tighten it. But I have a problem, and that problem is that I have to lock the knot so it won't loosen. And once I tighten it, there's no way that I can really force it under, so you turn it and be one step ahead by creating this loop, by capturing the loop. Now I tighten it with all my might, And as I draw it tight, the first knot is sitting there at the end. The second knot starts to travel towards it. Had you not put that first knot in, it would have gone off the end there. Now that holds momentarily. And now we take the string and pull the long end through and then tighten it. That's called half hitching. And when that is snugged up, then the knot should theoretically not come loose because you've locked it. Then you now want to tie the other diagonal so that the two boards are at 90 degrees to each other. Same thing again. We could use another method. Here I tie a knot in the end, and then with a little bit of learning, you will tie a slip knot directly. Remember always that there are two knots on the same end of the string right behind each other, not one knot on one and one knot in some other part of the rope. There it is again, except this time I didn't bother threading it through. I put it over the ends, and you of course have to learn that if you haven't got the luxury to put it over the ends, you have to learn how to tie it the third way. Forcing that knot over, taking up a great deal of the powerful stretch of that knot. And now again, when I've almost got the knot done, I have to pinch the locking loop beforehand when I can at this stage do it, and I pull with all my might till the cross stays at 90 degrees. And maybe the knot is completed, and you pull the string through, and watching gently that you don't have snarls, you pull the loop shut. I pinched it here a little bit somewhere. Now I've completed the knot. Now sometimes, if this is a long range usage, you might melt all these ends together just to make sure nylon is really inclined to work loose if strong flexing is involved. But we won't bother with it. There is no way that you could glue or nail or whatever those two boards together like you can lash with the paracord. And again, with that short little bit, you've created a ferocious binding. And when I'm building a stretcher and the other people are frapping and wrapping and using yards and yards of cord, they're quite surprised that I have my complete stretcher built in minutes when they seem to take an hour or more. Anyway, the most fantastic knot in creation, the jam knot.